The National Incubation Center, Karachi, is part of the Ministry of Information Technology and Telecoms, MOITT. They have a project called Ignite Technology Fund, and all the NICs in Pakistan have been set up within this technology fund. There are 5 NICs in Pakistan: Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, Quetta, and Peshawar. The NIC Karachi is the largest incubation center in Pakistan. We have more than 170 startups incubated here since the start of the incubation center about 3 years ago. In our first cohort, we had startups like Baikia and a few others. Jo, mashallah se, they have gone on to become household names in Pakistan. The role of an incubation center is to act as a support mechanism for startups in the early stages of their life. So when a startup founder comes to us with an idea or with something that he has built, we help them to either build that product further or to accelerate their growth by connecting them with mentors, advisors, other founders, people who can help them on their journey, and of course we connect them with investors as well. And so, as you know, right now in Pakistan, the startup ecosystem is on fire. There is a huge amount of investment and interest coming from outside the country. So the role of the NICs is especially important in today's particular point in time that we find ourselves. Sure. So I think the major reason that global investors are now looking at Pakistan is there are a number of reasons. The first reason is that the perception of Pakistan globally has changed. Many years ago, Pakistan was seen as a dangerous and possibly, not a desirable place to invest. But over the last 5 to 7 years, the perception and the reality of Pakistan has emerged to the global scene. Investors have begun to realize also that the amount of talent available in Pakistan is incredible. Most people actually did not know the size of the country of Pakistan. 220 million people is a massive country. We are the 5th largest country in the world. And if you look at certain other statistics, 60% of our country is below the age of 30. And so we are a very young population, very technologically savvy. We have 100 million internet users now in Pakistan. There is a global freelancing website by the name of Fiverr. There are more than 5 million people from Pakistan freelancing on Fiverr, providing good services around the world. So the talent, the youth, the ideas that are available in Pakistan is what is attracting this foreign investment. As far as the current trends, we have received as a country more than $320 million in the last 10 months of foreign investment into startups. Now, some of this is from local investors as well, but I would say 90 to 95% of it is from outside the country. This trend is just, in my view, getting started. I think that within the next few months, we will see Pakistan's first unicorn. A unicorn is a company that is valued at $1 billion. And I'm very confident that, Careem was a Pakistani grown company, but it was headquartered in Dubai. So it did not really count as a unicorn in Pakistan. But we will, I think, very soon, inshallah, see the very first unicorn coming out of Pakistan. And the day that happens will be a signal for the whole global investment community that Pakistan has arrived on the scene. Pakistani startups are now ready for big investments, big checks being written by these global investors. The biggest challenge really these global investors face is that the amount of money that most startups need in Pakistan is not millions of dollars. They need a few $100,000. And most of these big VCs from abroad don't write $100,000 checks. They don't know how to do that. They write multi-million-dollar checks. So now what will become clear to the world is that Pakistan is creating startups that are increasing in value. Baikia, for example, is already valued at $50 to $100 million. Their next round of fundraising will probably value them at $300 to $400 million. Airlift, inshallah, will be very highly valued. It's already valued at $300 million and above in 2 years. So I think the opportunity is massive. The valuations in Pakistan of these companies remain reasonable. So the value for money for an investor from abroad, if he puts $1 million into Pakistan, he gets more value for that money, more equity in the business than he does now in India or Singapore or even Indonesia or Malaysia. So Pakistan, they're calling the last big market, the last frontier, because a population of 220 million people with a startup ecosystem that is just now beginning, it's just now taking off. My hope is, my expectation is that we will cross $1 billion in investments in the coming years, and we will become a major source of economic growth, as well as job creation, as well as dollar earnings for Pakistani businesses. Well, I mean, there are many companies that have raised very large funds in the recent past. New records are being set. In fact, even in the last 3 to 4 months, new records have been set for Series A, Series B. I would say that if I had to take a bet, I would say that Airlift will probably be the first to break that unicorn barrier. I met the founders, I know them. They're amazing people. You would not believe how humble and down to earth, practical people, really building something. I honestly believe that they will become Pakistan's first unicorn. But I think there will be many others coming right behind them. It may not happen in 1 day or 1 month, but with the support of the government, with the right policies in place from the State Bank, from the Federal Board of Revenue, from the SECP, it will become easier to build a unicorn in Pakistan than it is right now. Right now, there are so many practical challenges. Even to bring investment from abroad sometimes can become quite difficult because of some of the policies that these institutions have in place. I'm hopeful. We are working with all of these institutions to try and bring these policy changes, and also to create incentives for local investors. All over the world, when someone invests in a startup, they actually receive a tax credit. But in Pakistan, we have no such thing. We give people tax credit on buying mutual funds, but we don't give them a tax credit to invest in startups. Because I think it takes time for us to wrap our heads around this new phenomenon. And so my next bet may be Baikia. I have my fingers crossed for them. There are some amazing companies coming down the pike. I hope and pray, inshallah, that we don't create 1 or 2, but maybe 10 or 15 or 20 unicorns in the next 5-10 years. Sure. I think we need to make sure that our regulatory frameworks are conducive to startup environments. So we need to make it easy to set up companies. We need to make it easy to bring investment from abroad. And we need to make it easy to repatriate profits abroad. Now, what has happened is, recently the State Bank has allowed some companies to set up holding companies abroad to allow for the repatriation of funds. But the simple act of bringing money into Pakistan, despite it coming from a company account to a company account, can be problematic. I know of a case where one investor has tried to send X £1,000 from the UK into a business here, and after spending 2 weeks in the State Bank, the money has gone back to the UK. And then after a few weeks, they tried again after speaking to the State Bank, कि भाई हमारे पैसे आने हैं, ये investment आ रही है, please facilitate. After doing that, the money was resent, and after 2 weeks, it went back to the UK. So this is a live example of one of the startups incubated here at NIC facing these kinds of challenges. It's because we don't know what to do when money comes from abroad. We panic. As an infrastructure, we don't really know how to handle it. Similarly, when it comes to taxation, when it comes to tax incentives, tax breaks, it's great that we are giving the IT services industry, zero tax for 5 years or whatever that might be. We should consider doing the same thing for startups, because at the end of the day, the startup is building a technology-based business. It's creating jobs, it's creating growth, it's creating revenue, it's bringing in dollars from outside. Why should they not receive some kind of a tax incentive? There are many creative ideas right now in the space of financial technology, in the space of e-commerce, which are not being able to get implemented because the regulatory regimes are so slow that people can spend 15 months, 18 months, 2 years waiting for an approval to move from pilot stage to full consumer stage. And yet we have companies in Europe that a single company in Germany can provide you with licensing for the whole of Europe. So you just go to this one company, give them X% of your revenue, and they will give you access to the whole of Europe from one single license. हम पाकिस्तान के अंदर नहीं कर सकते. We get stuck in sales tax, withholding tax, provincial taxes. Every province has a different implementation plan and schedule. And dealing with the revenue boards is extremely problematic, especially for startups. And the kind of questions that are raised, the kind of issues that are faced by the startups every day because of sales tax and withholding tax filing requirements. It's a significant challenge for a small company. People don't have tax specialists. They can't afford someone just to do withholding tax or sales tax, because उसमें time लगता है. It takes time, takes energy. It's a challenge, and it has to be done every month. So the minute you start generating revenue, you start facing these challenges. So on the one hand, we want growth, we want money, we want economic growth, more jobs being created. But on the other hand, we're not creating that ideal environment to facilitate growth. In the UAE, they've just made an announcement that Sheikh Mohammed has said we will have 10 unicorns or 20 unicorns by the year 2030, which means they want to create 20 companies valued at over $1 billion in the next 9 years. And they will do it because they will make life so easy for the startups. Now, every startup is now thinking about opening an office in Dubai or next door in Saudi Arabia, because they're creating an environment that is conducive to these startups. We have taken some good steps. So we have the special technology zones coming up as well, but they will take time to implement. And those benefits will again take time to materialize for those startups. The hundreds of startups that are working today are struggling because of these reasons. Well, number one is the government funds involvement in directly investing in the startups. So they are identifying good startups, and the government through one vehicle or another vehicle is investing in the startups. So it's not just that they are creating, NICs are fantastic, but NICs don't invest, they don't give money to startups. But their incubators, their accelerators will actually give money to the startups that go through their process. And that is what a startup needs, that initial money, $100,000, $200,000. It sounds like a lot of money for us, but for a startup, that is 6 months of runway, maybe 1 year of runway in Pakistan. That means that 1 saal tak operations can operate. The company can run for 1 year on $100,000. And in that time, they can build customers, they can build new technology, they can get more customers, start generating revenue. That is called pre-seed investment or early stage investment. Yeah, there are probably 10 or 15 different verticals in which startups are already working. So yes, fintech and e-commerce get the most attention because they're the most popular. Fintech is raising the most money. E-commerce is having the most number of transactions, as in probably the number of transactions is now 14 or 15 funds raised in e-commerce, and probably 12 or 13 in fintechs. But the amount of money the fintechs are raising is more than the amount of money that the e-commerce are raising. Aside from this, there is health tech, right? Ed tech, education technology. There's agri-tech, right? So that includes food and water technology as well. There is electric vehicles that are coming up. So in the power sector, power technology, there is prop tech, property technology, or real estate technology. So there are so many sectors that companies are already operating in. Mobility, so many. The challenge is not that we need to attract people to the sectors. The challenge is that we need to fund the right companies in those sectors so that they can become successful, so that they can survive. I've met founders who have been running an amazing startup for 1.5 years, but they are now running out of money because startups initially, as you know, they don't make profit. And this is one of the problems that our local investors have. They say, ki, bhai, I need profit from day one. But that's not what a startup. Sure. So governance is a challenge. There have been cases in the past where investors have made an offer to a startup and then they've come and they've done their due diligence and actually then walked away without making an investment because the status of the startup was so poor that their governance was terrible, their accounts were a mess. They had not, their audited statements were not available. So actually, these are some of the things that we work with startups on. We teach them what is the right legal structure. So for example, if you are in a partnership, no one will give you money. As a legal structure, if you have a partnership, no one will give you money. You need to be an SECP registered limited liability company in order to even receive funds. So many of the founders that I meet जो कह रहे होते हैं या अल्लाह मेरे लिए पैसे मुझे पैसे चाहिए, that's like asking God to win the lottery, but you haven't bought the lottery ticket. How will you win the lottery? So there are certain basic things that are required for a company to even receive investment. The second thing people don't realize is when you do an agreement with an investor, it's not party time. It's the opposite of party time, because now you have an investor sitting here with you every day on your case. What is happening? How are you performing? What are the key performance indicators? Have you met your targets for this week? For this month? No, I'm stopping your salary. So getting investment is not the goal. Many people think, yaar, humne investment raise kar liya, we won. But that's not the case. Getting an investment is a responsibility. You have a responsibility to your investors. You cannot take it lightly. So this is why, especially when you have first-time founders, we invest a lot of time and energy in training them how to be professional founders. We have a program here called the Founder Institute Curriculum. Founder Institute is a Silicon Valley-based company. Their curriculum is regarded as best in class globally, and we put our founders through that program to actually make them better founders, more professional founders, ready to receive investment. Because just because you've got an idea doesn't mean that someone will give you money. And even if they want to give you money, how will they give you money if you're not structured for it? So that's the very, very first thing that we work on. The legal structures, the governance, the contracts, the agreements. One startup we work with has taken 2 rounds of family and friends' money, but they've never documented it. So now we're telling them, bhai, hello, before you go out and raise funds, you need to document these previous investments. So now they're signing safe notes, which is a secure agreement for future equity. So it basically says that I will give you money. I don't want any equity today. I don't want any share in your business today. I will take share in your business after 3 years based on the valuation of the company at that time. And it's a wildly popular way of taking money, because it takes the pressure off the founder. Ki bhai, aaj valuation karo, give me a value today of the company. When at a startup, it's very difficult to value a company. But when you do the first round, Series A or pre-Series A round, then you get priced. And whatever amount of money that person has put in gets converted into equity at that share, at that price. So it's a great arrangement, but again, even that is relatively new to Pakistan. It's happening now. We have a group of people working very, very hard in this ecosystem to try and bring the level of professionalism up. But there's a long way to go, both with the founders as well as the people working in the regulators, as well as those people who are trying to facilitate these people, facilitate the ecosystem. They need to know what are the right things to do, and so we minimize the time wasted. We really help the ecosystem to grow. So first thing is, you have an idea. Everyone in Pakistan has an idea. Everyone is walking around thinking, yeah, someday I'm going to do this, someday. I'll do this someday, right? Very few people take that first step to start something. This is a hashtag I use a lot. Hashtag start something. Pehla qadam lo. Take the first step. Well, what does that mean? You have an idea, find 3 other people who like your idea, who share your idea, that you know well. They become your co-founders. Now you start building the technology. You don't need millions and millions of rupees. You can build a basic product, what we call proof of concept or a minimum viable product. You can build it for a few 100,000 rupees. And if one of your co-founders is a tech guy, technology expert, maybe he can build it for you as his contribution for his shares. So you build the first product, you get 5 customers, start generating 200 rupees of revenue. Now you have what's called POC, proof of concept. Now you go out and you ask your parents, I have this idea, look, this is working already. I need 20 lakh rupees, I need 50 lakh rupees. Chacha, mama, some uncle, some family friend. They say, okay, fine, I really like your idea. I'm going to give you 50 lakh rupees. Go and build the idea. Now you go and strengthen that technology, make it into something more robust. You start doing some marketing, right? Bring more customers. After this, now you have proven that your concept works. Assuming that it works, it may fail entirely. But if it works, now you are ready to go out and get investment from outside. And that will be a, $500,000 round, $1 million round, whatever you need at that point. Investors will look at certain things. Number one, how strong is the idea? How strong is the team? How scalable is it? Scalable means how far can it go? Is it an idea that will stay in Block D, North Nazimabad for the rest of its life? Or will it become Karachi? Or will it become KLI? Or will it become Pakistan? Or will it become South Asia and global? Now, if you can create an idea that has global potential, that can be rolled out in the UK and Africa with tweaks, then you're much more likely to raise investment, both locally and internationally. Not necessarily. If the startup can fund itself, if it's making enough revenue to be able to fund itself, you don't have to ask your parents for anything. But if you need the money, then that's the first source, right? If your parents are not willing to give you, or they don't want to give you 500,000 rupees, you will find it very hard to raise money from investors. Because wo kahenge yaar, your parents know you best. If they're not willing to trust you, if they don't have the money, that's a different thing. But they have the money and they don't want to give you the money. That means they don't trust you, or they don't understand what you're trying to do. In which case, it will be a challenge. But then you build the product yourself. But lots of people do jobs so that they can build the product. Once they build the product, then they launch it while still doing the job. They're working nights, they're working weekends. And then as they start to get traction, as they start to get to the point where the job becomes less and less important for them, and the company becomes bigger and bigger for them, that they can now pay them a salary, then they will resign from the job and move to this full time.